Hey, welcome back to my YouTube channel. Thanks for joining me again. And last episode I pulled out this Blue Thunder model that I've had sitting around collecting dust for quite some time that I've always wanted to do. And I did some screen captures from the movie itself and printed them out on photo paper, installed them inside some cutouts I did inside the cockpit, lit it with LEDs, and we ended up with a finished cockpit here with some working screens, as you can see in these images. I also just recently went through and repainted the top of those switches up there. I noticed in the movie that those were also colored, so I went back and painted those. I had them black before, so we've got what you see now. So to finish up the cockpit, we're going to move on to this upper portion. This goes on the top of the cockpit underneath the canopy. And I painted this with some Tamiya fine gray primer, as I do with most of my parts. And then I went through and shot it with some Tamiya chrome silver, airbrushed that on there. And then I coated it with some hairspray to protect the chrome paint. Then I went over and painted it with my Tamiya neutral gray color. Reason for this was so that I could scrape away for highlights. So what I've got here now is I can take my blade and lightly scrape along the edge here and try to get these little raised areas, the silver trim, to pop and highlight so that you can see that there's actual trim around all these areas here. So I just lightly scrape away until we got what we get here. Not perfect, but much better than trying to paint those by hand. Then I went through and painted all the knobs black, which is how they are in the movie. Added some color to those other handles and switches up at the very top, just like you can see in this image here and this image here. I tried to match that as close as I could. Then again, this is the canopy, and this piece will sit in the top of the canopy. But for now, this is going to be put to the side to be dealt with at a later point. What I'm going to work on now are the rotors. I've got 3 rotors here. They all just kind of push together, and you can see the one fits inside here, the other one they just slide together like so, and I just need to glue inside there. So I put a little bit of glue inside there, you can see it, and then I'm just gonna squeeze it together until the glue dries. And we've gone through and we have a full rotor here. I mentioned in my first episode this piece here was missing. I have this one, but this one was missing. It's very much needed, and it connects to the bottom of this piece, so I'm going to have to create it. It used to be right here apparently. That's where it's missing from. So I'm going to have to create that out of styrene. So I have a sheet of styrene here, 1mm styrene, which is the same thickness to match the other piece, and it's going to have to attach right here. So what I've done is I've cut a chunk out. I'm going to have to shape it to match the rest of it. I've drilled a couple little holes here. These are for these pins where it would glue together, and it fits right in there just like the original piece would have, and that's a place where I can glue these 2 pieces together. Then I've drawn on here the shape that it's supposed to be, as close as I can tell from the instructions anyway. I have cut that out with the blade, sanded it down, and then I'm going to go ahead, and you can see here they just fit together nice and neat. I just have to finish doing the hole in the middle there. And I've gone ahead and drilled out so I have a hole there for the rotors. You will also notice on this piece there's 2 rods on either side, these right here. And on the styrene I made, there should be a rod on the end here. There's supposed to be 3 of them. I have some sprues and parts from other models I always hang on to, and there's a piece here that's the same diameter, and I'm going to use that because it's already got some grooves and things in it, so it's not just a straight tube. And I've cut that to shape, and I've glued it onto my styrene there, and it's the same length as those other rods there. And you can see I've glued it together, and it fits in there perfectly right where the original should have gone. So I've gone and I've painted the entire thing with my Tamiya fine gray primer. There's a seam there which I'm going to try to fill with some putty and then sand down. So I've sanded down and pretty much gotten rid of it. It will be on the underside, so it shouldn't be really noticeable or seen anyway. And I'm just double checking here to make sure it fits on top of the rotors. And it fits right in there nice and neat like it should, and each one of those rods goes into the hole on the rotors where it's supposed to. Then we have this little piece here which goes on top of the piece that I just made, and that one freely rotates. Then we have a cap that goes on top of this pin here, which keeps the rotors from coming out of its housing. This is the housing here. This goes on either side of the pin. You can see how that little cap, it holds it. Then when the housing, these two halves are pinched together, it holds it in place so that it can't fall out. But it freely rotates and freely spins within that rotor housing there. And I've got that all glued in place. And then what I have are these other little rods here, or pins, pistons, whatever you want to call them. And they attach in this little groove on the bottom and the groove up top here. So I've got all three of those other pins, rods glued in place on this housing that holds the rotor. And you can see it still freely rotates. So the housing will go inside the body and then the rotors can rotate. Then I've gone and I've painted the entire assembly, the rotors, everything with my Tamiya fine gray primer, and just double checking everything still rotates freely. Make sure the paint didn't gunk anything up. Then I've taped off the actual blades here, and I'm going to paint the housing and this whole metal area right here inside of the blades. I've gone and I've shot that with my Army Painter matte black paint. This is going to be the base coat so that I can make that all metallic looking. What I'm going to use here is my Folk Art nickel paint, which you can buff. I just put some on a Q-tip here, and I'm just going to rub it across all these parts that I've pre-painted black until it looks really nice, and the black gives it a good base for the metal, gives it a nice metallic look to it, and it has the deep recesses that are still black. Looks really nice. I'm happy with the way this turned out. Then I pulled the paint off of the blades. This is all still working and rotating, and it's time to go ahead and paint the blades and get the entire rotor assembly done. So what I've got here is I have some Tamiya XF63 German Gray, and I'm just going to airbrush this onto all three of the blades and get a nice coating on all three blades here. And just keep working on them until they're fully painted and look really nice and clean. And there we have the entire rotor assembly. We have all three blades painted. We have the metal assembly and the housing that holds the whole assembly. Everything is still freely rotating. The whole thing works as it should with the piece that I made out of styrene. So next we have these video cameras on the side of the helicopter, and we also have these searchlights for the sides. And we have those searchlights right here. Here's the searchlight. So I want to put an LED inside there, and then they have this clear piece which goes over the front of it. So my LED will just illuminate and make that entire clear housing glow, and it should look like a searchlight. So I'm going to put the LED in here, and I'm going to have to drill a hole through this extension arm here. So what I've done is I've started doing a little hole here, and I'm digging out a trench with my hobby knife so I can get the bit in more straight. I'm just gonna go ahead and screw this bit in until it goes all the way through, like there. And I should have enough of a hole there. The diameter should be enough for the LED to come through. So I'm going to just bring the wires through, pull them on through. And that trench will also help the wires go into the body of the helicopter so they don't get pinched. So I got this cool white LED here, and you can see it just fits inside that whole area nice and neat. If you put the clear housing on, here's how that looks. And it looks really nice, looks like a big searchlight. So what I'm going to do for this LED is I'm going to use my micro crystal clear. And I'm just going to take some of this micro crystal clear on a toothpick, and I'm just going to glob a bunch inside this hole here. This is going to act as my glue, and because it dries totally clear, it doesn't interfere with the light from the LED at all. It also doesn't harm the LEDs or anything when they're inside of it. It doesn't do anything to them. So I just fill that up, and then I'm just going to pull this LED through and get it into position where I'd like it to be. Use some tweezers here just to get it exactly how I want it, so it's aiming straight out the front. And I've got both of those with the LEDs inside and the micro crystal clear, and now they've both dried, and you can see it's totally clear and they both light up really well. And here's kind of an example of how it's going to look on the side of the helicopter. So now I'll move on to these video cameras which go on either side of the helicopter. These two housings go together here, and on the side of them, in addition to the cameras, which are the two little kind of rectangular pieces sticking out the front, those are the cameras. But on the sides we have these navigation lights here on both sides of the helicopter. Red being left, green being right, and I'm going to light those up. So what I'm going to do here is, for these two guys, I have a 1mm diameter fiber optic, which I'm going to use to light up. There's actually two navigation lights here. The long one is a flashing white light. The short one is either red or green, depending on the side. So I'm going to go ahead and drill through the center of these with a 1mm drill bit. And I've got both holes drilled there. You can see both holes there. And then I'm going to take my 1mm fiber, and you can see it fits through there nice and snug and is held in place. And then I'll just have the LED attached to the inside of it. I'm going to have this bend on the fiber optic and put the LED here where there's more space for it. And I'm going to cut the end of this off at the appropriate spot, which should be right about there, based on the other side. I'm trying to match both sides together. And you can see when I hold it up to the other side, it's about the same length as that long one there. Then what I'm going to do is sandpaper down the end of this. I'm going to round the tip of it a bit and just sand down the whole thing so it's kind of frosted. You can see that the tip is rounded now and the whole LED or the whole fiber optic is frosted. That way when you shine the light inside there, it illuminates the end better. You can also see there's a big gap here. The fiber optic is keeping this portion here from closing. So now I've cut away and you can see how it closes. What I had to do was cut away on the inside here. You can see all that I cut away with the blade there, so that the fiber optic wouldn't intrude. On this piece, I haven't done it yet. You can see how all of this right here sticks out. That was pinching up against that fiber optic, so I had to cut all of that out there so that that fiber could fit inside there and also make room for the LED that is going to light that fiber. So you can see there how it closes up better and fits. So now I've rounded this little tip here of another piece of fiber. That's going to be for the shorter bulb here, and that's going to be for the colored one. This particular one I'm working on is the left side, so it's going to be red. And you can see when I hold it up against this one that they're basically about the same, sticking out the same distance as the molded plastic. So I'm just going to snip off this one here for the red LED, and and then I'll put an LED inside there on the end. And there they are, both secured in place. There's a gap right here that I'm going to have to fill in with some putty, just so you won't see that fiber coming through there. I'm going to have to fill that in. You can see that gap here on the other side that I haven't done yet, where it's just, that's the way it's molded. So I have some clear red Tamiya paint. I'm going to dip the one fiber that I want to be red. I'm going to dip that in the paint. It's a clear paint so the light will shine through, although I am going to use a red LED as well. I just want there to be red when the lights are not on so you can tell what color they are. Doing the same for the green fiber optic and the green side. And you can see the red there, and then the other one will be a flashing white. So I'm going to take some of my micro crystal clear and I'm going to put some on the end of this red fiber here. And then what I'm going to do is take this 0603 red LED and I'm just going to stick it right on the end of the fiber and glue it with the micro crystal clear into place. And you can see I have it all glued into place with the crystal clear, and when you turn on the LED, the tip of the fiber lights up. For the white side, I have a 603 cool white LED and I have a piece of shrink tubing here. I'm just going to put the LED right in the very end and shrink it down to hold the LED in place. And I've got that shrunk down right here. LED is in place, not going anywhere. Then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to snip this and shorten it up, and the other end will be for the fiber optic to go inside of. Then I just take this whole assembly here and just slip it over the end of the fiber optic, and then when it's turned on it'll illuminate that white side, and you can see that light up right there. So now I'm going to take some of my liquid electrical tape and I'm just going to go over both of these fibers with the liquid electrical tape. For one, on this fiber it'll hold the shrink tube in place, and then it'll also act as a light blocker and block the light coming out from the fibers and keep them from bleeding into each other. And you can see here I've got the red one and the white one going, and you don't see any bleeding anywhere. And then I've got a little trench here that I dug out with a X-Acto blade so that the wires can go through so they won't get pinched when it's installed in the side of the helicopter. And here's another little test with both halves together just to see how it's looking, and it's looking really good so far. I like the way that looks. The red and then the white LED just doing, it's going to have just a little flash periodically like the regular navigation light. And then I've done the green side as well, same thing. And then the whole assembly will fit right into the side of the helicopter, like so. And that's where it's going to be mounted, and you can see how that goes right in there. And then I've got my wires coming through with that little trench that I dug out. So now I'm going to move on to the navigation lights on the rear tail here. So we got two nav lights. We have this light in the back and this one on top. The one on the back is a solid white light and the one on top flashes. So this first one here, I'm going to put the fiber in here and run the wires through the body. So I need to cut the end of that off for my fiber optic. So I'm just carefully here just going to trim off that little tip there. Alright, and then I have that cut off, and that's where my fiber is going to go, and I sanded it down just a touch so that it's flat. Then I'm just going to drill again with my 1mm drill bit. I'm going to drill through this so that the fiber can go inside there. I've got my hole drilled. And here's my little fiber, which I have sanded and rounded just like the other ones from the video camera section. You can see it just fits right in there and it'll stick out the back here, and that'll be a solid white light. So you can see here I left room for the LED to shine through it. And this one at the top, there's like a little rim there and then a base. They look like they're almost about the same diameter. This one's going to be a little trickier. So I cut that top portion off, which is supposed to be the light, and I'm going to drill through here and see if I can drill through that base portion as well, which did not work out. So I cut that away. This is so thin up top. The issue I'm having here is getting it so the fiber optic can go all the way down. I kept those little pieces that I cut off, the little rings that go around the light section, so that I can hopefully glue those in place so it'll still look accurate. You can see where the drill bit has gone through, and the fiber optic needs to curve into this area here for the LED. This one is flat, this one has a little more of a deeper area on that fin. You can see the difference, so I need it to curve. So there you can kind of see the trench. It's curved slightly because it needs to fit into this area here where there's more space for the fiber to run down. And like here's the fiber right here. I'll just put a slight bend in it. And then you can see here I put another piece of shrink tube. Here's the sanded end, so it's nice and bright and evenly lit. And this will sit right inside here like so, with a nice little curve to it. So I'm gluing that in place with the microcrystal clear. I have some clamps holding it in place, and then my wires are going to be running through the body, also held with microcrystal clear. And I've got that glued, and now I can go ahead and do a quick little test here. The two halves together and light it up, and you can see how nice and bright that is on the end where I sanded it down and basically made it a frosted tip. Once again, using microcrystal clear, I'm going to use that as a glue to hold this fiber in place on the back here. So I've got that one glued in place with wires running down, and this top one glued in place with wires running down the body as well. And then I can put the two halves together, and you can see how both of those lights are working and lighting up. And these are based on actually watching the movie and seeing the light pattern. So now I'm going to see if I can take these two little pieces and put it around this fiber here. And I've got the one piece glued, and that works just fine, so I just need to put the other one on there. And I've put both of them there, and then I did a little putty around there to make it more like a base, a housing for that light. Now we're on to the electronics to power everything. This is an Adafruit Trinket MO. It's a little basically Arduino board. My plan is to attach it to the back side of the cockpit here, and I want to put it on the back and attach it, and then have the wires just running to this. It's the closest and best place to put it. I have my sketch here, which I have to make the lights flash. I'm going to have the left and rights flash intermittently, and the back one doing a pulse flash. I've got my board here. Wire 1 and wire 2 are the left-right flash, and then wire 4 is a pulse flash for the tail fin. And I'm going to turn it on here, and you can see how those are going to work. The one that pulses on the tail fin, and the other two are the left and right navigation lights on either side. So that's basically how the lights are going to work. Shrink tube, once again, what I'm using this for are standoffs for my Trinket board. I'm just cutting them like little leg standoffs, and I'm just going to take all four of these that I cut away, and I've glued them to the underside of this Trinket to hold it up so that I can solder wires on there. Then I've gone and I've glued it onto the back of the cockpit, just like I was talking about. Ended up gluing it the other way, and it's totally secure on the back of the cockpit here. I have a PCB board. I cut out this little strip here, which is going to be for positive and ground wires. Again, little standoffs cut from shrink tubing. I'm going to take that, and I've glued it to the bottom half of the helicopter. Again, one strip will be for positive, one for ground. And I've decided I'm going to mount this with a tube, so I need to make a hole right here for a tube to go in so the wires can come up and power this board, and also go up and power my Trinket MO board. So I've got the two halves held together with clamps, and I'm going to drill a hole right there for this tubing that I'm going to use to hold the helicopter. So I'm using a 5/32 drill bit. I've got my hole drilled there, and it looks really good, and my tubing fits right down inside that hole, nice and snug. So now I'm going to go ahead and start to assemble the side video cameras to each side of the helicopter. Just secure those in place with some Tamiya thin cement. And then I'm also going to do the same with my searchlights. So I've got those both mounted on this side of the helicopter, and then I also mounted the lights on the other side body of the helicopter. So we've now got both video cameras and both searchlights mounted to the body. So I did not get as much done as I had hoped to on this episode, so it's actually going to stretch out to one more. This is where I'm going to leave this episode. Next one, I'll finish assembling the rest of it and wiring it all up, painting the body of the helicopter, and then we'll have a finished Blue Thunder to present to you. So once again, thanks for joining me, and I'll see you in the next episode. Hey, if you like watching my videos, please feel free to give them a like. And so you don't miss any of my upcoming videos, click subscribe.